What I thought I would do is just maybe spend a couple seconds, short seconds, about myself to kind of humanize my brand a little bit. As was mentioned in the introduction, I work at SAP. I've worked at SAP for about 8 years now in a variety of different communications roles. This is my family. I have 2 kids. I grew up in Switzerland. I lived there for 9 years. I also worked in Germany for 3 years at SAP's headquarters. I teach university courses outside of Philadelphia in the US, and I play tennis. So if we have any tennis players here, maybe we could find some time. That'd be great. I'd also like to talk a little bit about SAP. Anyone familiar with SAP? A couple people. All right, so I think it's probably worthwhile going into a little bit of background on the company. But before I do so, we're in the B2B space, and I believe I'm probably the first person today to really come from a B2B perspective. Who in the room works in a B2B space or works for a B2B company? B2B2C, so it definitely goes back to the consumer. So we're a rather large company. Someone told me recently, or I heard recently, that we've just reached the 100 billion euro mark as a valuation for our company. And once you reach the 100 billion mark, you've graduated to a big company. So we are in the process of doing so. So we have over 232,000 customers, 66,000 employees worldwide. We have an office here in Dubai. We operate in 180 different countries. We generate about 16 billion euros in revenue, and we are the world's largest provider of business software. So most likely, your firm or any firm that you know, any big company, large company, small, medium, size company uses business software, and most likely they use SAP as well. And the way that we like to put that in the context is that 63% of the world's economy or transactions in the world economy run through an SAP system. And so what we like to say is that if there's a chocolate manufacturer near us called Hershey, and if their system broke down, we wouldn't get chocolate. If the utility broke down, you wouldn't get electricity. So a lot of this is driven on SAP software. So the first part that I'd like to talk about is we're living in a world of change. And we've heard a lot about big data and the massive amounts of data that are in existence today. And I'd like to just spend a slide talking about that as well. So 1 billion people today are engaged in social networks. This means that people have the power to make or break brands. So collectively, these people could break a brand overnight, a brand that's taken so many years to build. 15 billion devices are connected. And whether these are people talking to people or people talking to machines or machines talking to people, and one of the big things that we're seeing now too is machine to machine, M to M, cars to cars, cars to gas stations, cars to parking lots, washing machines to the utility, utility to your refrigerator. So more and more we're seeing connected devices playing a huge role. The global middle class is growing from about 2 billion people today to 5 billion people by the year 2030. That's going to have huge implications in terms of communication, in terms of technology, and in terms of resource constraint. Business and personal lives are becoming one. The lines have definitely blurred. When you leave work, you're still in work mode. You're still using your company's device to text or to tweet or to blog. So the world has become one. We've produced more data in the last 5 years than in the history of mankind. That's unbelievable if you really think about it, the massive amounts of data. And so what we need to do is we need to make sense of that data. And we need to do it fast. The world is changing, it's moving very quickly, and we need to do it in real time. And finally, there are more mobile devices today than there are people, which is unbelievable as well. So going to the next chapter here, when you look at a B2B company, and I think even when you look at a B2C company, social media is central to the decision-making journey. And that's really what it comes down to, especially for a company like SAP. We help companies run better. We try to change the world in ways that we can affect, but ultimately it's about buying our software, and we don't hide that. 86% of B2B technology buyers engage in social activity before they make a decision, and for business purposes. That's a huge number. It just shows how relevant social media is. More than 50% of B2B purchase decision makers go online, look on social before even speaking to a vendor. I don't think it's a secret that a lot of buying decisions, consumer, business, et cetera, are made before you even talk to the customer or talk to the company. And IT buyers trust social media 1.5 times more than any other source. And so for a company like SAP and other B2B companies and all other companies, social media is a critical part of what we're doing, and we're embedding it in absolutely everything we do. And so now switching to another chapter, what we look at are some of the platforms that we can use internally at SAP and also externally to engage our external stakeholders, but also to get our internal executives and employees engaged in social media in general. So we break this into internal/external, and then external. The two pieces that I'd really like to mention here, which I think are very exciting and also very important, are Jam. Is anyone familiar with the social media platform Jam? It's a rather small company that works in the social collaboration space. We use it at SAP. It's become our social media platform internally of choice. What started off as a few hundred users last year and grew to several thousand users at the beginning of this year. Now we have 28,000 of our employees on Jam, talking with each other, doing business in real time, collaborating with customers, working with our partners to change their business and to move the conversation forward, and to listen, and to find out what's important to them. The second piece that I'd like to mention is the middle column, and that's the SAP Community Network, which is one of the largest, if not largest, B2B community networks in the world, with 2.5 million active participants. This is a great platform for us. Our customers are on there, our employees, our software developers, and again, this is an excellent place for us to go and listen, and to hear what the conversations are, and to see what's important for our customers and developers and people who have a stake and interest in SAP. One of the key things here is that when there's criticism about your company, I think the first reflex is that you're going to respond yourself and say, no, that's not true. You're going to go on Twitter, you're going to go on Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera. The beauty of having a community network is that you can have third parties do that for you. And they're often more knowledgeable or as knowledgeable as you are in your products. And so anytime there's some negative press or negative comments that could spread very quickly, we have people in the community, without even being asked to do so, to respond to the criticism and to say, no, that's not true, and this is my experience. I don't know if everyone can read this, but it's really important to empower your employees and to give them the power to use social media. This cartoon from Dilbert is about 3 years old, but it's still extremely relevant. So the middle person, I'll just read this real quick. So Beth is a new marketing manager for our social media strategy. By the way, the company policy states that you can't use Twitter or Facebook or any social media at work. We don't trust our people to work, and we don't trust our people to work from home. So in other words, if you blog about me, you're fired. If you say something wrong, you're fired. And so, Beth thinks, wow, great start. So I think the point here is that you need to empower your employees. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that are in regulated industries that don't necessarily have that option. But I think we heard earlier today, it's just important to be involved, to listen, and to get the word out there. And the only way to really do that is by getting your employees involved as well. And here's a dashboard that I created for some of our executives to show who's doing what in terms of thought leadership, in terms of major topics that they're blogging about, tweeting about, and being covered about. And I used this slide recently to try to convince one of our other executives to participate more in social media. And it just goes to show that our executives as well as our employees are very engaged, and it's not only bottom up, but it's top down as well. And so what are we measuring? In the social media space, we're measuring share of voice, favorability, and combined, they make the net impact score. And this is very similar to what we've been measuring in the traditional media space. Unfortunately, we're still a little further ahead in terms of measurement at SAP in the traditional media space, where we look at message penetration and quote penetration. So in other words, what quotes are being picked up from our executives and what messages are resonating the most. And it's primarily a budget issue, but it's also an educational issue, and it's something that we're working on so that we can have more data to be able to provide to our executives. So what are we reporting? Again, it's very similar. We're conducting these analyses to measure messaging, sentiment, and positioning. And it's very difficult to know how well you're doing unless you're measuring and reporting it back to your leadership. And so we've been reporting our results for about 3 years now and engaging our top-level executives so they know exactly what we're measuring and how well we're doing. And this is an example of a dashboard that we'll provide to them that shows how well SAP is doing in terms of, in this case, blogging. We look at it for tweeting as well, versus our peers, our competition. So how many blogs? We have a defined space of 100 bloggers that we follow and their blogs. And in this defined space, which is really important to us, how many blogs are referencing SAP versus the competition? And we look at it on a rolling 6-quarter basis. And then we can dig a little deeper into this, and we can see what are they writing about and what's important to us for our business strategy, and do the two meet? Do they intersect? If business analytics or mobile strategy or real-time in-memory database is important to us, but that's not what's being reported, and we're doing very well in analytics, which is important but maybe not as important, we're able to change our course. And so it's very important. It is quite basic still. As we heard, there are certainly other ways to listen and to measure, but this is what we've been doing, and it's been very helpful for us in real time to be able to change our course. And one of the last slides or chapters that I wanted to talk about today, for anyone that works with reporters, as I have and I do in the traditional media space, what we've come up with is one strategy. It can't just be social and it can't just be traditional. It has to be one strategy where you're working together with your colleagues on one traditional and social media strategy. And one of the key things is building relationships. One anecdote that I like to talk about in the traditional media space, there's a reporter from USA Today in San Francisco that I really wanted to have cover one of our stories. I thought we had great stories that I wanted him to cover, and for 6 to 8 months I was trying to contact him and email him, call him. He would never return my calls, and I thought, wow, this is not going anywhere. Ultimately, I started following him on Twitter, and I could tell immediately that he was a huge sports fan, as am I. And so after a couple weeks of monitoring his tweets and posts, I chimed into the conversation and started to talk sports with him. And immediately he got in touch with me, and we started having a conversation about sports. And not to be too self-serving, I waited a little bit, and about a month or 6 weeks later, I called him. And he took my call immediately. And over the past little while, he's written several stories in which SAP has been featured prominently. And it's a story I like to tell because it's so basic, but it is about building relationships, and it's about listening, and it's about, social really provides the opportunity to listen and to participate on a different level than we've ever had before, and to mine that data, whether it's through a sophisticated tool or whether it's me just following someone on Twitter. There's so much information out there that if used well can lead to great results. So in summary, we're clearly living in a world with a lot of data. Know the platforms that are available to you and what the objectives are. It's really difficult to start a campaign if you don't know the objectives. And it's amazing how often we see people just trying to start a campaign without really knowing what they're looking to do. I think it's great to involve executives. They want to participate. You immediately have their buy-in once they are participating, and it makes things so much easier. Establish measurable programs that are agreed upon with your executives in advance, and report back to management regularly too on the agreed upon metrics. And then lastly, turn traditional media into social media. So thank you. Appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.